Tonight, the dramatic homecoming, the return in the middle of the night. 3 Americans held prisoner in North Korea arriving home, the president and first lady waiting. And tonight, the president has now revealed when and where he will meet face-to-face with Kim Jong-un, and what the president tells our John Carl about what Kim Jong-un really wants. The other major hotspot we're watching tonight comes after the president tears up the Iran nuclear deal. Israeli warplanes now striking Iranian military targets in Syria after what Israel says was an Iranian rocket attack. The severe weather hitting the east at this hour, the threat right now. 2 confirmed tornadoes already, and now the storms from the Carolinas up through D.C. and New York. The new concerns tonight about the potential for a massive eruption, why authorities are now watching this crater in Hawaii. The ABC News investigation tonight, Dan Harris inside the heroin factories just over the southern border, how they make it, and then who they get to deliver it right into the U.S. And the black student who fell asleep in a Yale dorm in a common area, then woken up. Police are called, and what happened next?
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a Thursday night, and we begin with that emotional homecoming that played out in the middle of the night. 3 U.S. citizens held prisoner in North Korea arriving home shortly before 3 this morning. The president and first lady were there. The 3 Americans traveling back, so did Secretary of State Mike Pompeo after his meeting with Kim Jong-un. And tonight, right here, the president has now revealed when and where this face-to-face meeting with Kim Jong-un will happen. Our John Carl witnessing it all, and President Trump telling John what he thinks Kim Jong-un really wants.
Just hours after his dramatic 3 a.m. welcome ceremony for the prisoners freed from North Korea, President Trump tweeted a save the date for his meeting with Kim Jong-un. Singapore, June 12th. We will both try to make it a very special moment for world peace. The return of the prisoners sets the stage for the historic summit with Kim Jong-un. Why do you think he decided to free these prisoners now?
I really think he wants to do something. I think he did this because I really think he wants to do something and bring that country into the real world.
The president praised the North Korean dictator.
We want to thank Kim Jong-un, who really was excellent to these 3 incredible people.
The prisoners described their new freedom as a dream, but their experience in North Korea sounds more like a nightmare. I had to do a lot of labor, he said, but when I got sick, I was also treated by them. Later, Vice President Pence told me one of the men hadn't seen daylight for a very long time.
It's heartbreaking to think of it.
But the focus of the Kim-Trump summit is nuclear weapons, not human rights. The North Korean dictator and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo were all smiles after meeting for the second time, appearing more like old friends than adversaries. Kim waved goodbye as Pompeo drove away. Today, their pictures were plastered on the front page of North Korea's state newspaper. Kim is signaling he's willing to give up his nuclear weapons.
Do you believe him? I mean, again, somebody described as a madman, brutal dictator, killed his own people, starved his own people, allegedly even killed family members. Do you believe him?
We all understand the record of the Kim regime. But what President Trump is determined to find out is whether he is prepared to change.
John Carl with us live tonight from the White House. And John, President Trump is now preparing for this incredibly high-stakes meeting. The world is watching. You're also watching another story breaking tonight involving yet another member of the president's cabinet who has considered resigning.
David, I'm told that at the Wednesday's cabinet meeting, the president lashed out at Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen for not doing enough to secure the border. I am told this was such a tongue lashing that it struck several in the cabinet meeting as over the top. And one person here at the White House, one senior official, says that they have heard that Kirstjen Nielsen had suggested to some that she may resign as a result of this, although she has put out a statement saying the president is rightly frustrated that existing loopholes and the lack of congressional action have prevented this administration from fully securing the border.
John Carl tonight leading us off on both fronts. John, thank you. Meantime, tonight, just days after the president ripped up the nuclear deal with Iran, pulling the U.S. out, tonight, Israel now striking Iranian military targets in Syria. These are the images coming in tonight. And remember, President Trump pointed to Israel in Benjamin Netanyahu's presentation on evidence against Iran as part of his reason for pulling out. Again tonight, Israel now launching those strikes, they say, after a failed Iranian rocket attack. Is this a sign of what's coming? Our team was in Syria as this unfolded, and ABC senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell tonight.
Streaks of light over Syria as Iran and Israel, two sworn enemies, move into more direct confrontation. Israeli fighter jets striking dozens of growing Iranian targets in Syria. The Israeli Defense Forces releasing aerial footage of a hit on a missile defense system. The camera approaches the target, then cuts out. Weapons depots and intelligence sites also targeted in Israel's biggest attack in Syria in more than 4 decades. Israel says the strikes were retaliation after, hours earlier, Iranian forces inside Syria fired 20 rockets towards the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. Tel Aviv says Iran missed its targets and retaliation was swift and fierce. Tonight, Israel's Prime Minister saying Iran crossed a red line. And in all this, U.S. forces still on the ground in Syria, as the White House also condemns what it calls Iran's provocative rocket attacks.
These attacks coming just hours after President Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. These attacks certainly seem like a reaction by Iran to that decision, and above all, growing military pressure from Israel. David?
Ian Pannell, who's now crossed the border into Iraq tonight. Ian, thank you. And back here at home at this hour, bracing for severe weather in the middle of the country and right here in the east. 30 million under storm watches at this hour. 2 tornadoes already from one storm near Richfield, Wisconsin. Winds of 80 miles an hour. Serious damage from the wind in Fenimore, Wisconsin. Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Ginger Zee. She's tracking it all for us tonight. Hey, Ginger.
David, at least 68 severe storm reports already on the map, and we can see the severe thunderstorm warnings from western Nebraska right through North Carolina, Virginia, and up into Pennsylvania. Those yellow boxes that are indicated there, that means you could see hail, damaging wind of 60+ miles per hour, and this line is going to be with us really through sunset. And then after sunset in eastern North Carolina, it hangs out a bit until about midnight. Then we've got to look for the next risk area for tomorrow with damaging winds and scattered hail, parts of Nebraska and western Iowa.
Could be a tough night ahead, but great to have you back, Ginger.
So
Welcome
good to be
back.
here.
Little guy's good?
He's great, thank you.
Thanks, Ginger. We're also closely watching something else tonight, as you know, Ginger, that new threat from Hawaii's Kilauea volcano. Take a look. Authorities are watching the risk inside this crater. They believe lava could now mix with groundwater that could possibly trigger a massive explosion that they say could hurl rocks as big as cars. ABC's Kana Whitworth on the scene again tonight.
Tonight, Hawaii's Big Island bracing for a blast. 3 new cracks opening up since Tuesday. The National Guard took us in, and what you're looking at right behind me, this is actually Fissure 15. This is the newest fissure that just broke open. The lava in these neighborhoods coming from a crater on Mount Kilauea 25 miles away.
Right here behind me, this is the biggest lava flow in Leilani Estates. It continued on for at least a half mile. In some places, it's about 25 feet high.
Now all eyes on the Halemaumau crater, where the lava lake has dropped more than 1,000 feet, nearly reaching the groundwater. If that happens, it could create steam-driven explosions, powerful enough to send rocks as large as 6 feet in diameter or as heavy as several tons, flying up to a half mile or more.
And it's usually not just one explosion, it's usually a series. And so as that ash falls and piles up, and it's just not a safe place to be.
Since the eruptions began, 36 structures lost and countless cars destroyed.
Kana Whitworth with us live again tonight, this time from Volcanoes National Park. And Kana, you were telling us that they're so concerned about this possible explosion that they're now shutting the park down tonight?
Yeah, David, so this is one of the most active volcanoes in the world, but they haven't seen an eruption like the one they're predicting since 1924. And when that happened, it sent ash 20,000 feet into the air. So they're closing the park on Friday for safety reasons, and it will remain closed indefinitely. David?
Well, we can see those spectators over your shoulder there, Kana. This has been something to see all week. Our thanks to you again tonight. In the meantime, the Pentagon's investigation into that deadly ambush in Niger in October, finding that the operation was not properly approved and that troops weren't properly trained for it. The report, including this animation detailing how the convoy met with overwhelming firepower from ISIS-linked fighters, and how the 4 American soldiers who died fought to the end, saying their heroism should be officially recognized. We're going to turn next here tonight to the ABC News investigation, an extraordinary look tonight inside one of Mexico's biggest drug cartels, in fact, the largest single exporter of heroin to America. Tonight, ABC's Dan Harris and his team, the first Americans allowed to document the entire process. The farm, you're going to see the heroin factories, and then how they get those drugs right to the streets of America.
Up this dusty road in northwest Mexico, these sun-dappled purple flowers are at the source of an American catastrophe. Poppy, the raw material for heroin.
We straight all the gum.
You're getting the gum out of the
Yeah.
poppy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Among the armed workers, we find a grandmother recently deported from Los Angeles. Obviously, you know this because you lived in the United States, but the heroin epidemic is a huge problem. Do you have any concerns about being part of it?
Doing this one, I feel very bad. I feel like dirty, you know, but I need money. What can I do?
Next step after you harvest the poppies is you need to cook the gum into heroin, and that's what we're going to see now. The main cook says he's 25 years old and has been doing this work since he was 15. So there are a lot of chemicals in this. Would you ever inject this into your body? No, not at all, he says. I got to be honest, I think I need to step away for a second because these fumes are hard, so momentum. And this is the final product, white heroin. At night, the next step in the chain, smuggling the product up into America. This is clearly not the first time he's done this. There are millions of dollars worth of merchandise hidden in this vehicle. Who takes the car across the border? Do you, is it Mexicans or do you find American citizens to do the work?
American citizens.
American citizens. How do you find Americans to do this?
I don't know. Eso lo hace mi jefe.
Your boss does that?
Yes.
Your boss does it? Interesting. No one we met inside the cartel thinks a border or anything else will shut down the drug trade as long as so many Americans are willing to pay for their product.
And Dan Harris is back tonight and right here with us. What you witnessed is really stunning. And what we just heard there, build a border wall or not, they say it won't matter because they have Americans who are willing to drive this heroin right into the U.S.
Yeah, in our time with the cartel, we heard no concern whatsoever about building a wall. They say they'll just use tunnels, or as you said, they'll have Americans drive the merchandise over the border. So how to shut these cartels down? In the end, it may be very difficult as long as there is so much demand for their product right here in America, David.
Wow, fascinating reporting, Dan. Thank you. And you can see much more of Dan's report on a special edition of Nightline tonight, right after Jimmy Kimmel. Set your DVR. We move on tonight to new developments in the case of Michael Cohen, the president's embattled attorney and friend, facing growing questions over millions paid to a shell company set up by Michael Cohen. That money coming in after the election from major companies, even a firm with close ties to a Russian oligarch. The question now, what was that money for, and was Cohen making money off his proximity to the president? Here's ABC's chief national affairs correspondent Tom Yamas again tonight.
And your response to Avenatti?
This document is inaccurate.
How do you feel about you may have changed an election?
Tonight, President Trump's longtime personal attorney, Michael Cohen, firing back against allegations he shopped around access to the president. The charge coming from Stormy Daniels' attorney, Michael Avenatti, who published financial details about a company Cohen started shortly before the election, Essential Consultants. Avenatti says Cohen used that shell company for transactions totaling more than $4 million shortly before the election into 2018. But Cohen's lawyers say Avenatti made some mistakes. In court documents, Cohen's attorneys say Avenatti had the wrong Michael Cohen in some cases. Under possible fraudulent and illegal financial transactions, Avenatti lists a wire transfer to an account in Toronto for $4,250. Cohen's attorneys say that account belongs to a different Michael Cohen, a Canadian citizen.
So you're talking about 99.35% of the information that we released is right. You know what? I'll take that.
As Avenatti is dealing with his explanation, the web of companies that hired Cohen's firm are explaining why they got into business with him. A spokesman for Korean Aerospace Industries told the Washington Post KAI was unaware